Alright, this is going to be my quick guide for beginners on how to build a speaker box on a budget, And the very first thing I'd like to start off with is do something simple. I would assume you have a scenario like, oh, I got a cheap speaker off Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, side of the road. It's got some crappy Walmart factory box that's not optimized for the speaker, and you want a little more out of it. I wouldn't start building a 6-order bandpass or a T-line on your first rodeo. I'd start with a simple sealed or ported that is to spec. Don't try nothing too crazy. If you want to tweak some variables, just do it one thing at a time. Don't try to be an innovator first time around. You'll regret it. It'll be a waste of time and material. And I guess to start the very first thing. So, if you're like me, you probably got a bunch of old, worn-out tools that are kind of junky, and they get the job done. And my circular saw had this blade on it, which is not good for cutting MDF. It kept binding up, and it splinters plywood, and it's been awful. And I know this is about keeping it cheap. This does not keep it cheap. This is like a $29 blade. I'm sure you can get a cheaper one, but this is a fine tooth carbide tip blade. Much better for precision work. And it doesn't bind up. It cuts through everything like butter. And because, I'm not cutting stuff that has nails and stuff in it, this blade's practically going to last forever. It's going to last a very long time. And then another thing is, say you got a friends or family that have tools that you don't have. Ask them if you can come over and use them. Ask if you can borrow them. I'm borrowing this table saw. I can't afford a table saw. Wish I had access to a chop saw to go with this, but let's see. What other recommendations? I would definitely recommend getting some kind of some type of drill, like an impact or something like that, because that really speeds it up. And I really like my DeWalt drill. But if you're on a budget, there are cheap Chinese knockoff drills that are like 20 bucks that'll get the job done, and then just put a good Phillips head bit in it. And, those drills might not be great. They might not have the best battery life, but they'll get the job done. They'll save you a bunch of time and a bunch of headaches. And if you're not used to using a drill, something that is very important, you want to make sure that whatever angle, if you put the screw in at this angle, you keep the drill at that angle. Because if you slightly turn it, it's going to strip out and make your life hell. Some of it takes practice, but for the most part, you just want to make sure that whatever angle you start at, you end at. And another recommendation I have, if you're going to have any bends in your box, which if it's a port, you should, don't skip out in the 45s. Even if your 45s look ugly as hell because you're cutting them with a Sawzall, if you can make them fit in there and caulk around it or something, don't skip the 45s. Sound does not like corners, and you got to think of it just as like how it's going to flow. You don't want it to just hit a wall and stop. You want to curve it like this. If you look, this actually goes like this, but it's got 45s all through it. The reason why this has so many bends in it is because this is going in my truck, and it would go to the roof if I didn't have all these bends in it. I guess another thing to think about is don't forget your bracing. If you have a large area that's got thin wood, and it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have some type of bracing from here to here, but I'm really restricted for space and cubes and all that. Oh, you know what? And another simple thing that'll make your life so much easier, buy a calculator. Don't just buy any calculator, buy like a graphing calculator or something like that. And when I say buy a calculator, don't go to Walmart and spend $100 on a TI-83. Do what I did. I went on eBay and I spent $7 on an excellent condition TI-85. There are some TI calculators that are graphing calculators that are very nice that people don't like because they were weird and they just work so much differently than what they're used to. And schools don't use them and stuff because everybody's stuck with how the TI-83s work and that programming language and all that. And here's part of why I say to do that. While I was building this, there's a function on the TI calculators called store, and there's a bunch of letters all over the buttons if you've ever used one. And so, for example, I actually stored my total port length as U, and then I would make a couple measurements, and I'd want to see where I'm at, and I'd be like, okay, so we got 12 inches here, or 12.5 inches, 12.5 minus U, and then it would give me how much my remainder is. Little things like that. It's not much, but it makes it so much easier. If you're going to do this right, you're gonna need math. You're gonna need math. I do actually use a port calculator, so I guess that is one part where I cheat. There's a website where you can just enter in the volume of your box and your surface area, your port, and all that. And you can find these formulas online, like, you know, the get displacement is length times width times height. Also, something to keep in mind, if you're going from cubic feet to cubic inches, because there's a lot of that, cubic inches is not 12, 1 cubic inch is not 12 cubic feet. I mean, 1 cubic foot is not 12 cubic inches. I forget what it is, but I had to actually Google it. It is a far bigger difference than that. Let's see, what other words of wisdom do I have? Yeah, for cutting the hole. Yeah, for cutting the hole. So, how I get my perfect hole traces is I actually use a scrap piece of wood, and I'll drill a small hole on close to the one edge of it. Not too close, but I'll drill a small hole close to the one edge of it, and then I will look up the spec for the cutout of the speaker, and then it'll tell you the diameter, and then I'll do half of that to give me the radius, and we'll go from that. I'll measure from a. Oh, by the way, when using a tape measure for something and you want it to be precise, yeah, of course I can't find my tape measure. Oh, hey, you know what? And that's something else. Buy a good tape measure. They're not that expensive. This is like $5, and I really like these Chameleon tape measures. And one of the big things I like is they tell you the increments, and it saves so much time, and time's money, right? But yeah, you know, so if you're going to measure something precise, and you got a hole or something, like say I'm measuring this screw, you're not going to want to just put this tick to the end of it because this thing wobbles around. You're going to just want to go 1 inch in from it, and then subtract an inch from whatever you're measuring for a little extra precision. So anyways, yeah, I'd get my measurement from here to here, and I'd drill another small hole here, and then I'd take my stepper, my cheap-ass Harbor Freight stepper drill bit that's terrible, but it gets the job done, and even though it's slow, and I'd drill through here till the hole's big enough that I can stick a Sharpie through it, and then I would, you know, I'd measure the length, I'd measure how far back I want this, put like a line here, then I would measure how long this is, and then do half of that, and then put a dot here and draw an arrow towards it so I know what it's for. I'd set this on a dot, screw it down where it's almost snug, but I can still spin this around, put my Sharpie in it, do that, take it off, drill a couple holes around here, get my Sawzall in there, start my Sawzall in here, and then just kind of, I actually let Chase do that one. And, you know, if you're really on a pinch, you might not be able to afford the $25 for a sheet of MDF. I mean, that's not bad, but, you know, I've definitely been in that boat. The first box I built for my Sundown, I actually went dumpster diving in a place called Spectra Wood. They're a woodworking company, and they throw out all their scrap wood at the end of the day. Now, diving there is actually very competitive. You want to get there as close to they close, at least to that one, because everybody knows they throw out their wood, and everybody tries to get it. But, you know, I found 1.25 inch thick MDF, and I literally just duct taped that shit on my back and walked home 3 miles because I didn't have a vehicle back then or anything, and it was terrible, but it was what I could afford. Oh yeah, and you know, you can get some cheap drywall screws at Walmart, and I don't use drywall screws for strength. I use them to clamp everything together. Wood glue will be just as strong as the wood as long as it's clamped properly, and drywall screws are an easy way to do that. And I'm actually starting to not like wood glue anymore because I got a new favorite thing, and that is liquid nails. This stuff is great, and you get it's pretty damn cheap too. And you know, I got like this little $3 caulk gun. I would honestly recommend going to Lowe's and get a caulk gun that's decent, but you know, this $2, $3 whatever it is caulk gun gets the job done. It just sucks compared to a nice one. And by the way, if you don't want to make a mess, when you squeeze the trigger, you do that, and it relieves pressure off this plunger and stops ejecting out the end of the tube. But the nice thing about this is, say you're not working with precise tools, and you end up being like an 1/8 of an inch off on something like your 45, and you got a big gap to fill. You can just take that caulk gun with that Loctite, or even caulk and silicone, whatever. You can go in there, fill that gap, take your thumb, smooth it out, wipe your thumb on a rag, and end up with something that looks really good and is going to flow really well. The way I mounted these 45s, by the way, I probably wouldn't recommend it, but it was just the easiest way to do it, maybe. But they kept wanting to twist and stuff, and I couldn't get them to go where I wanted. That's why there's like gaps and stuff here, but I was getting impatient. I drilled a small hole the whole way through so it wouldn't split the block. And then I drilled a big hole just a little bit into it so I could sink the screw inside it, put the screw in it, take a piece of sandpaper, rub that off, and then put my Loctite on it and do one of these numbers. And, oh, and one more thing. So, I would not recommend using drywall screws to mount your speakers. It can be done, but if you care about them, it's not going to be great for the basket because of that shape they have, especially a stamped steel basket. It'll warp the hell out of that. What I'd recommend using is something like this. You know, I didn't even go to the hardware store. I got these at Walmart. This little plastic anchors with screws, blah, blah, blah. I mean, these are like the kind of screws you'd find in speaker cabinets and stuff. You know, these are like $2 or $3 at Walmart, and you get I got 20 screws. There's 8 screws per speaker. I have 2 speakers to do. I need 16 screws, 16 out of 20. I'll have a couple spare. Who knows? It might be cheaper to go to the hardware store and just get a pack of screws like that, but Walmart's a lot closer, and it wasn't that much of a price, so that's what I did. Let's see, what other words of wisdom do I have? I don't know, but there's a fly on my leg. I think I've about said all the important stuff. Oh yeah, and I think this goes without saying, but you know, speaker boxes aren't really, you build a speaker for one, build a box for one and it works for the other. For best performance, you tune them to the individual speaker. They gotta have displacement, and a mistake I have made a couple times in the beginning was I would use my displacement and come up with a measurement for the box, but then I would forget that is the inside measurement, and then I would build the outside of the box and it would throw everything off. And if you change your size of your box, you change the tuning of your port too. So, and you know, you can't be afraid to do math to do this. If you're afraid to do math, you're not going to be able to do this. And this is actually my cut sheet. I have 2 sheets. I don't know if my other sheet's in the truck or not, but you can see there's where the original port plan, but it was so tall I couldn't stick with that. And these are my actual, I made myself, oh yeah, see, so there's my internal dimensions there, shown there, and then I just kind of drew what it would look like to visualize it, and then I just made measurements of what all this would be. That is, and you know, I would not recommend making your first build something to fit in a really tight space, because it is surprisingly complicated and frustrating. Yep, actually there's another picture there. This was the original plan for the speaker box. That's what I wanted it to be, but things changed. Oh, it's hot in here. There. This is what my process looks like. Some of my stuff is upside down. But you know, I got my 0.75 to 1 cubic foot, 32 hertz tuning frequency. So I converted that to cubic. I converted that range to cubic inches down here because it's a lot easier to work in cubic inches. There's the inner diameter of my port and all that fun stuff. Oh yeah, you know, I guess something else I'd recommend, having more than one color of writing thing, because it makes it so much easier to read in the end, as you can see. I got like this red gel pen thing that writes on everything, and then I got a Sharpie felt tip marker that also writes on almost everything. So, makes my life easier. So, I think that's about it. Oh yeah, and you know, bracing's a good idea. Honestly, these could probably use bracing, but I think it'll be fine without it, because they have this big long rectangle here. They could probably use like a little strip of pole kind of deal in here. But you know, if you got a long area in your box that doesn't touch anything, especially when you're putting power to it, you know, it's gonna, if that box starts to actually move around, that's gonna cripple your sound quality and output. So you don't want that. Now I'm going to take some sandpaper over here and clean all this grass chunks off and start painting this.